Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Produce Moms Podcast, and I'm Lori Taylor. I love hosting this show because I love the amazing stories that we tell on it. I love the incredible people that join me on the microphone week after week and share their passion, share their stories, share their gifts that they are sharing with our industry and our world to help make our lives better, advance agriculture, make our industry more equitable and prosperous for all human beings that touch it. And this episode today, it has a very serious topic. We are welcoming two women that are just absolutely revolutionary as it relates to empowering, frankly, everyone around them, but they're both uniquely invested in empowering farm workers. So the topic today, we are working with the Equitable Food Initiative, also known as EFI, to raise awareness for Sexual Harassment Prevention Month in April. And so joining us from EFI, we have LeAnne Ruzzamenti, and LeAnne is the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Equitable Food Initiative. And for those of you that aren't connecting the dots right now, EFI, it's a label that perhaps you have seen at the grocery store, responsibly grown, farm worker assured. And it's an organization, a non-for-profit organization that I believe so strongly in. At the Produce Moms, I actually volunteer as part of their marketing advisory council and do all that I can, as part of their, as part of the industry to help raise the awareness and recognition for the good work that they're doing, because it really is, it's remarkable how EFI is supporting the advancement of farm workers. And the way that all came full circle for me, gosh, it was 2019, which for sure feels like a lifetime ago at this point. But in 2019, I had the opportunity to travel to Baja Sur, and I experienced the operation of Andrew Williamson. And Andrew Williamson is the farming company or corporate name for the GoodFarms brand. So there's a really good chance that you have seen GoodFarms branded strawberries with the EFI logo on the packaging. And so joining us from GoodFarms is Amalia Lommel. And gosh, Amalia is the very first person that I had this in-depth experience with, where I was boots in the ground with her at the GoodFarms operation. And she spearheads the social responsibility for Andrew Williamson. And that she just helped me. She's the one who taught me what EFI is. She's the one who taught me, why our industry needs to have programming like farm worker empowerment and the different ways that farm workers need to be empowered. And the tough topic that we're diving into today, sexual harassment prevention, it's one of those pillars. And so these two women that are with us today on this show, LeAnne and Amalia, they are going to help explain to us, current state, what type of programming is in place, their aspirations for the future, and beyond their aspirations, their strategies and programmatic ways where we are going to make agriculture the most empowering industry that it can be. So with that, I want to welcome our two guests. We will start with LeAnne. LeAnne, you're a return guest to the show. Please say hi to everyone.
Hello, and thanks so much for shining a light on this critical topic, Lori. It's really wonderful. And I love to start by reminding everyone that I've spent my life in and around agriculture. I grew up on a family-owned apple farm in the Hudson Valley of New York, after school in the pack house and summers at the farmer's market. But I have a background in marketing communications, and I've always been passionate about lifelong learning and access to education. I found my way back to agriculture as a marketing professional, first through the dairy industry and then back to fresh produce when I joined EFI in 2016. And I just love the role that EFI plays, where we partner with growers to provide training and development opportunities for farm workers.
Yes, so agree with you. And Amalia, my friend, it's been so long since I've seen you, but you truly have, as my remarks indicated, you have taught me so much. You've touched my life in a very unique way. This is a long overdue welcome to the Produce Moms podcast, my friend. We are very glad you're here. Please introduce yourself.
Well, hi, Lori and LeAnne. Thank you so much for having GoodFarms on the broadcast today. It is truly an honor to be able to share some of the learning experiences that we've had and the way that we have been able to pursue worker empowerment and engagement and at just a different level. And we're so proud to be a part of EFI and to be a partner with programs. I have been in agriculture for 29 years now. I can't believe that because I'm only 32 years old. Just kidding. But so I've been with Andrew and Williamson Fresh Produce for 27 years now. And then I started our social responsibility program back in about 2008. So it's been a long time, a long program, but we have gotten to a place where we are very happy and we have a long road ahead of us still to pursue.
Gosh, Amalia, I didn't realize that you started this program. Did you say 2008? You started the social responsibility program at Andrew Williamson?
That is correct. So in 2008, our COO called me into his office and said, hey, would you like to start our social responsibility program? And I said, yes, but what is that?
Right. Well, that's exactly why I asked, because that makes you kind of, to use the slang term, you're like the OG of the social responsibility space and fresh produce, because it was not on the radar of most companies to have dedicated staff or even programming, under that sphere title.
No, exactly. So when he asked me to start a social responsibility program, I mean, our CEO, our COO, CFO, and all of our vice presidents are just looking ahead for opportunities. How can we better serve our customers? How could we better serve our workforce? And of course, food safety is a no-brainer. You have to do that, right? And for a long, long time, we've been doing that. And then the next thing on the agenda was, well, how are we treating our people? How are we serving our customers? How are we letting the end consumer know what we are doing? So they were looking ahead way before anybody else was looking ahead. And I was just very blessed to be asked to do the job.
The universe has a way of working itself out. You are exactly where you were meant to be in this space. You are I didn't realize you were such a pioneer, but you are, and you are such a passionary at that. So, LeAnne, I'd love for folks that haven't had a chance to tune into your previous broadcast on the show or any of the other broadcasts that we've done where we've touted EFI, could you please explain to our listeners, what is this organization?
Yeah, EFI is a skill building and certification organization that focuses on workforce development to create healthier workplaces and safer food by engaging farm workers in new and different ways in their work. So we work with growers and help train workers, creating new communication and collaboration networks. But we also work with retailers, having them understand what those industry requirements are and knowing that growers like GoodFarms are meeting and exceeding those. And we reach out to consumers so that they too have a barometer for comparing fresh produce brands and grocery retailers. And for today's conversation, I guess I would add that our program really strives to create respectful workplaces. Not only does the EFI model help to foster trust and communication, but the collaborative teams that we build and train on each farm, they have to be reflective of the workforce. So that ensures that women and minority groups have a place and a voice in the organization to address and to surface the issues first. It's also relevant to the conversation today. You know, the EFI certification has a zero tolerance harassment policy. But as I suspect we're likely to hear from Amalia, it's way more of an issue of culture, trust, and communication than a written policy.
Sure. Sure. So, I know that there's going to be more that we're going to dive into here, but I would like to get the conversation, started about our theme. Why do you think it's necessary to cover the topic of sexual harassment in the agriculture industry?
I mean, I think the number one reason to talk about sexual harassment is what we know for certain about it. And what we know for certain is that it goes underreported. It's going to be hard, if not impossible, to get a handle on something that at its very nature it puts people in a shameful, threatening, fearful place that they are likely to be retaliated against if they report it. In fact, one study that I saw said that 99.8% of people who experience sexual harassment at work never file a sexual harassment charge. So knowing that, it's probably a wise position to assume that it's happening in your workplace and to take steps to mitigate it. For agriculture specifically, I think there's a few other reasons that we need to take a look at harassment prevention. One is the nature of the work can leave an employer and the employees open to risk. People are spread out. They can be easily isolated. They often work under the supervision of one person, and that one person might have too much power in the relationship in terms of controlling shifts and quality of work. We also know in agriculture, we have a high portion of our worker population that speaks a different language. And so that makes it harder to know about policies and how they can access help if they need it. And then finally, I guess what I would say is the impacts of sexual harassment are long-standing. We can't say enough about the negative impacts that's on the individual involved. They experience PTSD and long-term health effects. But if you just want to look at the problem from a bottom line perspective for your organization, you see women who would leave jobs. You see both men and women who would be reluctant to refer family and friends to work in an organization that has harassment issues. So when you're in industry like the food and ag is right now, where we have a dire labor shortage, you really want to ensure that your working conditions are safe and healthy and a reason to be attracting and keeping talent, not driving them out the door. So from a human rights perspective, this is critical. From a bottom line and a risk reduction perspective, the work to prevent harassment is also critical.
Right. Those are some really good, thought starters and great insights. Are you in a position, LeAnne, where you're comfortable talking about like current state or how prevalent, the scope of the problem that you know of? I mean, obviously you shared the facts about what percentage goes underreported.
Yeah, I definitely have some data to share. It's emerging. And I'm going to cite a professor from the University of Washington, which is a team we partnered with on developing sexual harassment prevention curriculum. She tells me that the few studies on this topic have reported frequencies that range from 70 to 90% among female farm workers who've experienced harassment at work. And you might compare that to about 50% of non-agricultural office workers that have been reported to the EEOC. So again, it's underreported. Some studies cite that around 40% of all women have been sexually harassed at work at some point in their lives. So to me, again, it's a safe assumption to make that it's happening in your workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Those are that's some critical, but I don't know, just kind of hard to swallow data. Yeah. It really tells us all that numbers and data doesn't lie. And so that tells us all it's prevalent. We skew higher than other industries. It's a big deal. It's important that we have programs like what EFI has built. And, Amalia, I'd love to learn more from you about how do you even start this conversation with your peers at GoodFarms? How do you make sure that the farm workers and the farm labor at GoodFarms understands what their rights are, the types of policies you have in place, what they can do if they need to voice a concern or make a report?
Right. So the first thing that we did is that some of the partner owners of GoodFarms, we all went out to the fields and we talked to the different crews and we said, we're going to start a new program. It's called the Equitable Food Initiative, EFI. And we told them what it was about. And we said, so we would like each crew to nominate a representative so that that person could be the liaison between the labor force, your crew, and that person is going to receive some 40 hours of education and training and learn a bunch of different topics and learn what EFI is all about, and then get together every month and talk about different issues on the farm. And that first conversation, I mean, it took us a good 2 days to go through every single crew on one of the farms that we initiated this program with. And people were just not believing us. They were like, yeah, whatever.
Like skeptical, or just that it was more like just lip service, not,
Yeah. They didn't know what the end result would be, or what they had to gain from it or not gain from it. They were thinking, if I volunteer to be on this team, will I be retaliated against from my supervisor here? So it was very difficult to break down those barriers, because the first thing you need to do is to break down those barriers of communication and try to get people to believe in what you're trying to convey to them. And it was super difficult, but we got our very first team of, we call it a process improvement team. And I believe EFI calls it a leadership team, if I'm not mistaken. So we call it a process improvement team. So we got our first team. It was about 13 or 14 people on that first team. They received 40 hours of education directly from EFI, and they covered all the different pillars in the standards, which is labor and environment and food safety. They were taught a bunch of different things. And one of the things that they were taught was sexual harassment within the labor component. And then after they learned what it was all about, they were asked to volunteer 2 people, a man and a woman, to serve as the liaison specifically for sexual harassment issues or problems, or anybody in the workforce that wanted to talk about it. And so that's how we developed our very first team. Now, the rest of it was equally challenging, which was now go out and let the rest of the workforce know what EFI is, what the pillars mean, what it all contains, and let them know, in some cases, what sexual harassment is. Because
like even just defining it.
Exactly.
Critical. Right.
Like, what is it? Because culturally, and I'm not saying one specific culture at all, it's just culturally worldwide, some people may grow up in a situation where you think that that's just normal. It's normal to see your mom being beat up by your dad. Or vice versa, that could also happen. Or it's normal for your mom or parent to be constrained financially. This is how much you get financially every week. And if you don't do what I say, that is going to be cut down to less than half of that. So that's also some form of harassment, right? So then when it comes to being in a work environment where your boss is saying, do this, and then you will get something positive out of that. I'm not defining exactly what this or that is, right? But you can imagine people will just think that that's normal, but it's not, right? And we needed to teach everybody within the sexual harassment standards and the labor laws and all of that. What is your rights? What are your responsibilities? Your responsibility is to report, and your rights are to be safe and not be harassed in any way or in any method. And again, getting through that culturally was very difficult. So I thought, when I first started the social responsibility program back in 2008, I thought we didn't have an issue of sexual harassment in any of our farms in Mexico or the US, because I had never heard of such a thing happening. So I thought everything's fine.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would ask women, how do you feel? How are you treated? Oh, good.
And
okay,
no news is good news, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everything was good. I was not doing a good job of breaking down that barrier where people could raise their hand and actually speak up about what they were encountering. So when EFI came around, and after all that education and all of that communication back and forth, and the culture change that just happened, not overnight, but over a period of time, I began to hear about sexual harassment issues and claims. And then it was, oh my goodness, I am so glad that we have a tool now to address these issues, and a method and a process. And along the way, we had to part ways with some people that didn't understand that, no, it's not okay to do whatever it is that they had been doing. And other people were like, oh, I got it. It's not okay. So it was a complete culture change. And the culture change really happened through the education, the platforms, and the communication.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And to clarify your timeline on when this happened, it was programming that you got to work with as soon as you became director of social responsibility, or was your programming, did you get started on the sexual harassment prevention work when GoodFarms became a member of EFI?
So in 2008, I started the social responsibility program. And one of the first things that I did was go out to the farms and start just talking to people, just asking them, what do you need? How are we doing as a company? Is there anything we can assist with? And just started to get feedback from people. And along that series of questions was, do you feel safe?
Yeah.
Are we treating you well? Those types of questions. And the answers were always, everything's great. Mm-hmm. Everything's good. And it wasn't until EFI came around and we engaged with the program that the education portion of it came in, and the training and that good communication, that I started to hear about issues.
And what was the timeline for that, Amalia, just so people can follow the lineage here? So you said it was 2008 when you started the social responsibility. When did your journey take you to EFI? What year was that?
So I believe it was right around 2012.
Okay.
So we were the first company to volunteer to become EFI certified.
Wow.
Yeah. And we
That's
started
amazing.
that at one of our smaller footprint farms because we didn't know what we were getting into. So we all learned together.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. All right. So LeAnne, I'd like to talk to you now a little bit about, so was it around that 2012 era? I know you weren't necessarily with EFI at that time, but with your role spearheading their communications, I'm certain that you know the timeline for when the sexual harassment prevention component became part of the EFI certification.
Yeah, I think similar to what Amalia is detailing with GoodFarms is what our on-farms facilitators noted at our other grower organizations. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, as I noted, we partner with growers to build a respectful workplace, and we try to build enhanced communication and collaboration. So as that trust grows, which is what, Amalia just detailed for us, then suddenly our facilitators noticed that the issue of sexual harassment was coming up more frequently the longer a collaborative team had been in place. So one can reasonably assume that that increased concern and complaints was a result of the increased trust and communication, which is really what Amalia just underscored.
Yeah, absolutely.
Meaning it had been there, but it didn't surface due to the lack of process and trust. And then I would add something that I think is really interesting, that after Hollywood shined a light on the Me Too movement in 2017, and that movement had existed, I think a decade before, but we too in the agriculture industry saw an increase in the issue of harassment coming up, even in our initial trainings. So the initial training would be before that trust and new communication networks had a chance to grow. So I think the conclusion that we can draw from that is, the issue being identified and talked about more openly, because Hollywood shined such a bright light on it, has been helpful across all industries.
Yeah. In a way, they help people not feel alone with,
Right.
They normalized it, so to say. They made people not think like, oh gosh, I'm such an outlier with this issue that I have. You're not. And gosh, that data that you previously shared really indicates no one's alone if they are dealing with this. All right. So Amalia, what were some of the reasons, any specific stories, warnings, trigger signs where you knew at GoodFarms, like it's important for us to have this type of programming in place?
Well, initially it was, we were doing a lot of food safety and making sure that we were putting out a good quality and healthy product and doing our best in that arena. With a tight labor market, especially for harvesters in California, it's really difficult to, because, there's so many other farms, so many other workplaces that people could jump to. We really wanted to become the preferred employer. So to become the preferred employer, maybe you needed to make some changes. Do you pay more? Do you incentivize more? Do you look at your organizational structure? Do you look at your culture? What can you look at to become that preferred employer? So that was the initial reason that we volunteered to be the very first farm to endeavor on this EFI thing that we had no clue what it was, but we said, we're going to do it because we needed to be that preferred employer. And as I said before, I thought everything was good at our farms because that's what I was being told when I was asking the farm workers. Oh yeah, we're good. Everything's good.
Right. Yeah, no, it's great feedback. So, Amalia, sticking with you on this, and then LeAnne, I'll get your insights or feedback on this question as well. But Amalia, you made some really good points about, the cultural norms and how agriculture is such a melting pot of industries. There's people from all walks of life, any corner of this earth where humanity exists, farming also exists. And that makes us a very global industry, an industry that has a ton of people from all sorts of different backgrounds and cultures and heritage coming together to work on our domestic farming economy, or, for big companies such as Andrew Williamson who farm both domestically and in Mexico. So, Amalia, I would love for you to share a little bit more, expand on the cultural shifts that you have witnessed since the sexual harassment programming has been in place.
Yes, that is such a great topic to talk about today, because one of the things that I have witnessed from the start of my employment in agriculture, so we're talking back 29 years, right, to today. It's a pretty long time. I used to only see males as being the leaders at a farm, or an operator, or a farm manager, or even a crew leader. So males, that's what it was. And women did not have access to that. And now, 29 years later, at least on our farms, we have females in many of the key positions, whether it's a district manager, a farm manager, a crew leader. We have women now participating in our H2A programs. So the H2A is a guest visa worker program where we invite people from Mexico to come to the United States to have the opportunity to work those months in the US and have year-round employment. 20 some years ago, you would only see males doing that. And now we have women doing that as well. So that is a big cultural change. And it's not because it's a quota to say we're going to hire females to do this job. It's because at the moment, she or he, that's the best candidate for the job. It's not based on gender. Right. So, and then I see that more and more in other companies as well, where women are now rising and breaking that glass ceiling and just stepping up and have the positions. So I've seen that, and that's a huge cultural difference. And one of the components that really helped us obtain that was building that trust factor with our workforce, where women were now raising their hands to volunteer and actually asking to be promoted into a different position, from a harvester to a quality checker to a crew foreman to a farm operator. So I mean, it's wonderful, right? And it all comes from the education, the trust, and just that culture change.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. And LeAnne, anything you'd like to add to that? The cultural shift that's occurred over time as you change, as EFI helped change the culture at many of your member farms?
Yeah, I mean, EFI is a model, right? So, what is that saying? You can, if you're doing it alone, right, you can go faster, but together it's slower, but you go further. Yeah. And so culture change and integrating voice from multiple perspectives and multiple cultures, as you so beautifully said, agriculture reflects, takes time and commitment. And so, you know, what you're hearing there's a lot of time and commitment that comes in from the growers to make that happen. And the change is not always easy, and hard decisions have to be made. Amalia noted that earlier. One story that I would like to share was on a GoodFarms location. I was talking to the farm manager, and she talked about this shift around trust and a harassment-free workplace. And she said, you know, what I noticed is as the culture changed, suddenly husbands were willing to bring their wives to work in the field. And suddenly brothers were saying to sisters, oh, you should come to GoodFarms and work, because they had that assurance that they would be treated well and being respected. And so again, the work to get there is it's work, it's a commitment, but I think the benefits, you know, again, I go back to it's a human rights thing that we want to strive for, but you're going to reap all these other benefits, being an employer of choice, as Amalia said.
And one of the things to focus on is something that LeAnne just said. It's a journey. It's really not a sprint. It took us a long time to get to where we are today. With that culture change. So you can't expect to say, oh, I'm going to get EFI certified and I'll be certified within a month or two, and then my culture will automatically change, because that's never going to happen. It takes a long time to build that trust factor.
Long time and a lot of work. And the two of you are great examples of what that work looks like and that longstanding commitment means. So LeAnne, I'd like to get your thoughts on what can people do to address sexual harassment in their own organizations?
Well, I think I have some really exciting news for those of us who work in agriculture. I mentioned earlier a professor that we'd worked with at University of Washington and our partnership with them to create sexual harassment prevention curriculum. We supported them in the development of this training and toolkit that was designed specifically for and with the agricultural sector. The training program took them 6 years to develop. It involved 72 different stakeholders in the process, like everyone from human rights organizations to state and federal agencies, grower associations, legal experts. So you are getting a very well thought out and developed program. And it's absolutely free. There's no charge to use it. It's available online. It's completely turnkey. There's a facilitator's guides, videos that lead the entire course, educational posters that you can put up. If you're more comfortable using hard copies, you can order the whole toolkit for $45 and everything is printed and mailed to you with the videos loaded on a flash drive. So it couldn't be easier just to get started. As Amalia said, doing EFI, that's the gold standard, right? You want to hit that and really be addressing culture change on your farms. For sure, we would love to have you, but you have to get started in this conversation, and education is the key. So if you visit equitablefood.org/harassment, that's going to bring you to EFI's Preventing Sexual Harassment page, where you'll find stats and resources and clear links to this free BASTA toolkit, which is offered by the Pacific Northwest Agriculture Safety and Health Center. They also have webinars that are train the trainer opportunities, but everything is linked from that webpage, equitablefood.org/harassment. And I would say that's an excellent place for folks to get started.
That's an amazing place to get started. Amalia, what about you? Do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Well, I would say definitely take LeAnne up on that opportunity and that tool. That is amazing and wonderful. It's not easy to become EFI certified, and that may be a huge jump. So if people could get started with something, I would definitely say log on to the Equitable Food Initiative page and do that. The other thing that you could definitely do on your own is start up some conversations and let people know that you want to have a harassment-free environment and that sexual harassment has zero tolerance, and that you want to hear from them. Let them know that it's safe. Let them know that there will be no retaliation. Let them know that they will be applauded for speaking up. Let them know what their rights and what their responsibilities are. The more information you can give, the more communication you have on a daily basis, just really starts to develop some form of trust between administration and the workforce. Try to make that communication not come from administration, but from a sense of community, a sense of, I am with you, I am part of you, you are part of me, we're all humans and we all deserve a better life. So if you can start that kind of conversation, you start to break down those barriers.
Yeah, Amalia, that's so beautiful. Puts a big smile on my face to hear you say that. And because and one reason is because I have seen it. I've seen it at your operation and in your ongoing commitment to this industry. It really is. It's amazing. What an incredible episode this has been. I'm going to give both of our wonderful guests an opportunity for their closing remarks. But before I turn the mic over, I want to say, hey, if you ever thought that, if you've ever doubted what I say about the ethos of this podcast, which is we're on a mission here with the Produce Moms podcast to spotlight people that are doing work that matters the most and people that are truly leaving their mark on the agriculture industry to make the world a better place. And oh my gosh, like my heart is full as I think back on this conversation that we've had, when I think about the impact that these two amazing women have had and their employers and the Equitable Food Initiative and all of their member farms. This is really remarkable. And it's also extremely important work. So with that, I'm going to welcome each of our guests for closing remarks. LeAnne, we'll speak to you first, then Amalia will actually have you sign us off from the show. So LeAnne, closing remarks and goodbyes to our listeners.
Yeah. Thanks again, Lori, for taking the time for this topic. We just wrapped up Women's History Month in March, and now here we are in April, where we're encouraged to look at harassment prevention. So I just want to say, let's honor the many contributions of women and move toward creating harassment-free workplaces where everyone can come to work and contribute in a safe and fulfilling way. And there was just one thing that Amalia just said. I was like, if everyone did this, this is what GoodFarms does. She said, we applaud people who come forward. If you just take that away, that shame, that retaliation, that fear, and you applaud people when they come forward to bring an issue, I think that is a beautiful first step.
Thank you. Could not agree with you more. And Amalia, please, with final remarks from you and our send off for the show, you get to say goodbye to all our listeners. So please.
Thank you, LeAnne, for being such a great partner. I know I lean on you a ton on and on throughout the year for different advice. Thank you so much. And Lori, I met you about 3 years ago, as you said, on our trip to Baja. And that was a pleasure to have you on that trip and to let you meet all of our wonderful people that we collaborate with on our workforce and for you to learn about EFI. And that has led us on a journey to our talk today, where now we are able, the three of us, to share what EFI is to a larger audience. And I thank you for that very much. And on behalf of our female farm workers, thank you so much for bringing light to sexual harassment and the prevention of that. Together, we are building a stronger workforce, a more empowered female labor force, and a more respectful environment. So thank you all so much for listening today. And I hope that you listen to the next broadcast from Produce Moms. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.